Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
The amazing, self-repairing human body was designed to last. Yet many of us age early. What's causing our premature decline? With us this hour to take a deeper look at longevity, gut health, and immunity is Dr. Robert Silverman. Dr. Silverman is a chiropractic doctor and clinical nutritionalist. He's the founder of Westchester Integrative Health Center and author of Amazon bestsellers Immune Reboot and Inside Out Health. Named Sports Chiropractor of the Year by the ACA, he serves as a science officer for Nutrigen, chief clinical consultant for KMBO Diagnostics, and advisor to Functional Medicine University. A global speaker and published researcher, he was the principal investigator on 2 Level 1 laser FDA studies, making him a leading voice in functional medicine. His website, drrobertsilverman.com. Dr. Silverman, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure to work with you, sir. So, as a chiropractic doctor, how did you become interested in nutrition and longevity?
You know, it was not by accident. It was truly by design. When you deal with patients in a clinical setting, you find out there's one thing that they all want. They want to live forever. They want to enjoy their life. And they want to look like they're 30 years old. So that said, longevity was an obvious venue and avenue for me to go down.
That makes sense, but did you ever get it figured out, the living forever and looking 30 years old? I want some of that.
You and me both. I'll share it with you when I get the bottle, and hopefully the genie comes out.
I hope so too. So tell us, what's functional medicine?
Functional medicine, basically the tenet is root cause resolution. So many times people go to the doctor and the doctor just looks at the symptoms. There's thousands of symptoms. They need to delve into the systems of the body. There's between 12 and 14 systems, depending on who you ask. But the real secret sauce is to get to what we call root cause resolution, or right now it's evolved to root causes resolution. What is causing your issue? So, for instance, if you were to unfortunately bang your head against the wall and come in with a headache, and I fixed the headache, but if you still were hitting the wall, I never got to the root cause. And that's where medical should be. That's where all doctors should be. Believe it or not, that's what patients are striving for right now.
Well, I would think, because eventually you're just chasing symptoms around, aren't you?
Sure. And, it's kind of like I was talking to my dad last night. I have a 94-year-old father, and he was like, tell me what your day's like. And I tell him, I'm trying to explain that I don't take the battery out of the smoke detector. Because, if you take the battery out, yeah, you shut down the symptoms, but the fire's still there burning and causing damage.
Or death, as the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So how much, I know this is a tough question and you're just going to have to take a guess, but how much of our illnesses are misdiagnosed because they don't find the root?
I don't know if they're misdiagnosed. I just don't think their treatment approaches are going to be the most beneficial for the patient. For me, when I sit down with a patient, what's most important is helping them get over their issue and helping them live a long lifestyle that's full of health benefits. So as far as misdiagnosed, I don't know if that's a term I want to use. I'll just say they didn't get to that root cause, if I could use that one more time.
Well, we'll probably be talking about root cause a lot in the next hour. So for many, the goal of having good health is to live longer, obviously.
Yes.
So how do we define longevity?
Longevity, without question, is the incisive conversation of 2025. There's not a coffee or a tea house that I can go into and not have a conversation about longevity. That said, longevity as a definition is lifespan versus health span. So lifespan is what it says, how long you live. Health span is how long you live without a chronic disease. 6 out of 10 Americans have one chronic disease. 4 to 10 Americans have 2 chronic diseases. So obviously, any office you walk into, he or she has to be well versed with the idea of chronic disease. But lifespan, health span, I look at vitality. So you could sit by a TV at 80 years old and say, hey, I've got great longevity. I'm watching Beverly Hillbillies repeats, but I've got no vitality. So I'm all about vitality. Can I travel? Can I enjoy myself? Can I still exercise? Can I enjoy the more extensive things in life? So lifespan, health span, with an overriding white cloud of vitality.
So if we take lifespan and health span and compare
Mhm.
them to where we've been, say 50 years ago, 75 years ago, are we having, let's compare them both. Are we having a longer lifespan? Are we having a longer health span or not?
The World Health Organization said in 2022, we are the first generation to recede in our lifespan. So that doesn't pose a good scenario for anybody. But I think the biggest problem is we may be living longer per se, but we're not living healthier. If I had to say that America is number one in something, right now in the industrialized world, we're number one in bad health. 98% of our dollars are spent on chronic disease and Medicaid, and 86% of our dollars in Medicare are spent on chronic disease. So without question, we're able to live longer, but we're not living healthier. We're not striving. And if I were to project as a 2028 presidential candidate, that's a joke, the first thing I would promise you is good health for all the American people.
Well, you'd probably get voted for because it doesn't sound like we're faring so well, if you would. But the body seems to regenerate itself. What's going on that we're getting chronic diseases?
I think the number one reason is our environment. And inside the environment is something called ultra processed food. 57% of Americans consume their calories from ultra processed food. We are the smartest species in the world. We can make our own food supply, ultra processed food, yet we're dumb enough to eat it because it leads us down a very slippery health slope.
So what is it with the ultra processed? Why does that impact our health so badly?
Well, the ultra processed food is mostly bad carbohydrates, and there are essential amino acids, there are essential proteins, there are no essential carbohydrates. And these are what I would call junk carbohydrates. They're synthetic foods. They're very high in sugar. They're high in preservatives. They work with the reward center of your brain. So therefore, you want to eat more and more and more. You know the story about where ultra processed food came by? The nicotine tobacco companies bought a food company in 1988. They said to themselves, what advantage do I have to sell more food? We're all in at the same starting line. So they said, we need to use something to light up the reward center like nicotine did for tobacco. And they used ultra processed foods with a lot of sugar and preservatives that would get us addicted to the food, frosted flakes, etc. And therein lies the rub, if you will.
And what's scary is young children are seriously addicted, aren't they? I remember my grandkids pitching an absolute fit when they were expected to. I wanted to feed them oatmeal, and they wanted their frosted whatevers.
Yeah, the frosted flakes and stuff like that. Unfortunately for children and teenagers, 66% of the calories they consume comes from ultra processed food. So obviously, not an ultra processed food? Well, I had somebody once said something that has a food label that's less than 5 ingredients. There's no ultra processed food in pears, apples, broccoli, grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken. My mother-in-law is visiting me now. I'm having a great time. And what happens? We go to the farmer's market every Sunday to get real food, if you will. So if I had to tell everybody one thing to start on Monday, a salient point is please avoid, limit ultra processed food and eat real whole foods. Or as my friend said, if it walked on the earth, the sun hit its back and it breathed air and it was grown in the ground, non-glyphosate, go for it.
Speaking of which, throw in the GMOs and the glyphosate, and then what do we have going?
Well, that's an interesting thing. Glyphosate is a particular ingredient in Roundup with the World Health Organization is called cancer causing. All these herbicides and pesticides are used to extend the life of food. they don't extend the life of the consumer and the human. And I don't know why people who have organic farms and organic products have to get taxed when these foods that are causing us such a injurious type of route are getting away with that kind of stuff. So these are herbicides. So one of the things I tell everybody, unfortunately, is I much prefer eating organic foods, so foods that have not been touched or in a more natural state.
So the genetically modified food is adding to the problem.
Well, now you're really going down the path of gluten. Yes, the genetically modified food, inherently what it says, it's not food, it's modified. It's not cooked, it's modified.
And what are we seeing as a result of, because you have to really work at getting away from that stuff. What do we see as a result of it being such a large part of our diet?
We're seeing a lot of instances of increased obesity. 75% of the American population is obese or overweight. I mean, it's way too heavy. The average American now consumes 160 pounds individually of sugar per year, 146 pounds of wheat, 142 pounds of artificial sweeteners. So when you really think about what we eat, I think about 12% of the calories that consumed by the average American comes in real whole food.
So do we have to store the not so real, not so whole food as fat?
And not only as fat, but look at the deleterious effect it has on people's gut. You know, it's an interesting thing when I talk about gut and gut health. 80% of your immune cells are in your gut, where your macro and micronutrients are absorbed. Did you know that the largest nervous system in your body is in your gut? Our gut allows us to have something called neuroception, or perception, or subconscious perception of what's going on around us. Men like to refer to it as a gut feeling, and women like to refer to it as a female intuition. It's our nervous system, actually from our gut, communicating with our brain, ascertaining what's going on. That is diminished greatly by consuming poor food. You know,
What? Go
I
ahead.
apologize. I asked a mentor of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, the father of functional medicine, and I said, why 80% of our immune cells are in our gut? He says, well, where's most of the carnage coming from? What we open up and put in our mouth.
Interesting. So basically, the digestive system needs to let you know that things aren't what you're feeding it isn't to its liking.
You know, the digestive system. So it's interesting. The digestive system is part of our immune system. It's actually our first line of defense. However, the digestive system is actually deemed outside the body. It has been postulated that that whole digestive system, which is the first line of defense, is the first time that the outside world meets the inside world when something goes through the small intestine and gets analyzed by your blood. So it's a fascinating thing, that outside world and inside world. So if someone came to me and they asked me what I would recommend, I would tell everybody, let's take care of our gut, because gut health is the epicenter of our health.
Well, we're going to have to really research that a little further because I want to hear more about it, and I'm sure the audience does too. But it's time for a station break. Dr. Silverman and I will return very shortly, so please don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Why do we age? With us this hour discussing longevity is Dr. Robert Silverman. Dr. Silverman is the author of Immune Reboot and Inside Out Health. His website, drrobertsilverman.com. Dr. Silverman, can you discuss the hallmarks of aging for us?
Without question, love to do that. First hallmark of aging, without question, is immunity. I like to refer to it as immune reboot. You want to reboot your immune system, go right over and press that red button and stop your immune system from doing all those wrong things and regenerate it. Make our immune system more resilient. Another hallmark of aging is inflammation. If COVID taught me two things, it taught me one, half the room's crazy and the other half the room is crazier. It also taught me that most of us are pre-inflamed. We're running around inflamed and we couldn't respond to specific stimulants. So if I had to look at inflammation, I would want to manage and modulate it with every one of my patients. Inflammation is interesting. It made the cover of Time magazine 20 years ago. Now it's not called inflammation, it's called inflammaging, how you cause aging from inside because you can't manage and modulate that inflammation. The microbiome, there's 3 microbiomes that we talk about. Number 1, the gut microbiome. We kind of talked about that before. Without question, the epicenter of your health, as I said. The second microbiome would be the gum microbiome, really growing in data. Did you know? Everybody knows what gingivitis is, an inflammation of bacteria of your gums. Did you know that it produces a destructive enzyme called gingipans? 90% of Alzheimer's patients have gingivitis because they have this destructive enzyme called gingipans. Mitochondrial dysfunction is another hallmark of aging. Everybody knows the mitochondria as the powerhouse of your cell. The number 1 complaint that people have is the lack of energy, fatigue. That's based on mitochondrial dysfunction. In addition to that, in the idea of mitochondrial dysfunction, we also look at the idea of immunity, and mitochondrial dysfunction is the number 1 reason for the increase in neurodegenerative disease. The number 1 body part that uses mitochondria is your brain. Something that may be new to many people is something called fascia, your body's wetsuit, the saran wrap of the body. So the other day I showed somebody, I took a chicken breast, pulled the skin apart. There was the chicken breast, that was the muscle. The white film's the fascia, and obviously that white film is attaching the muscle and the skin. And something else that we like to refer to of a hallmark of aging is dysbiosis, the unleveling of good and bad bacteria in your gut. You need about 85% good bacteria not to have dysbiosis. And I'll finish with loss of muscle mass, which is referred to as sarcopenia. The loss of muscle mass has been shown by a 1998 study in Tufts University to be the leading cause of aging. Muscle mass is your longevity organ.
Oh, interesting. So what causes us to lose it outside of our sedient behavior?
Interesting. As we age, it's a sign of aging, the loss of muscle mass. We don't eat enough protein. We need more protein as we age than we did when we're younger, and most people cut down on their protein. So I would tell everybody, you need a gram of protein for every pound of desired body weight. So most people want to lose. So if you're a 200-pound man and you want to weigh 160 pounds, let's say, you need to consume 160 grams, of protein. So that's one of the biggest reasons. Also, we stop exercising. We become more sedentary as we age. If anything, with this longevity wave and craze, people are exercising more. We're seeing men in my age bracket, 60, starting to exercise. Everybody wants to look like Brad Pitt with their shirt off. So muscle mass is the currency of longevity.
Why is that?
Because it's actually an endocrine organ, muscle. It dispenses with blood glucose. People who are muscular have a much lower incidence of diabetes. Muscle also is great for postural support. And the number 1 marker for aging is actually movement patterns. And we have better movement patterns when we have muscle to help us move and hold our structure tight.
I've heard years ago, and I don't know if it's accurate, you'll have to help me with that, is that if you are active and musculature, build your musculature during your childhood and young adulthood, it's easier to gain it back if you get a job where you sit a lot and then you want to rebuild than it is if you never had it in the first place. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. So, but it's not the muscle that has memory. It's your central nervous system that holds the muscle memory. You've got this great computer in your body, and everybody always relates to the brain. Brain is part of the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. It remembers everything. We may not remember, I may not remember at 13 years old, I had this flu, I had a sore throat, but your body, your central nervous system will remember it. Because of that memory, it's easier to put muscle on that you've already had than build new muscle. But People who have never lifted weights before, don't worry about it. Your body still has the capability of responding. Start today.
So, is there an age at which the body can't respond anymore?
My dad says at 94, his body's responding as well as it ever has. I think there is a slope. I think men and women's slope are very different. Women are wave-like because their hormones are wave-like. This really crazy wave, especially what we call premenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal. And men are sort of a slow, drippity drop of declivity of loss. So anyway, we all get there, but our bodies are able to respond because we're always able to make new cells.
So, if someone says, "I want to weigh what I did when I was 27," but then they get down to that weight and they're not shaped the same. Okay,
Right.
does it have to do with the difference between muscle mass and weight, as far as what weighs more, fat or muscle?
Well, muscle does weigh more than fat, as both of us know. But that's a great point because we're not able to put muscle mass on as easily as when we were younger. Our body composition changes. Also, collagen is a decrease in our body, and collagen gives us those firm, tight structures. So we don't look quite the same. However, I have to say that the people I'm seeing in the news, people on Instagram, people coming in my office that are adhering to a healthy lifestyle, they are really pushing the envelope in a positive light. I've never seen more 50, 60, and 70-year-old men and women from a distance look 20.
Hmm. That sounds like a wonderful improvement to me. So, let's change gears just a little bit.
Sure.
What's a biomarker?
A biomarker is, when you go into the doctor, they should think of what they do. They take your temperature, they take your blood pressure, they look in your eyes and ears, they take blood. A biomarker is something that determines where you are right now in space. So biomarkers are great because they are allowing you to assess. And then when you're able to assess as a doctor, you can then treat, and then you can reassess to see how much that treatment worked.
Okay, and so what are the biomarkers of longevity?
Here are some of the ones that I would recommend for you, my good friend, to take. Number one, biomarker of longevity. We're concerned about Alzheimer's. Did you know there's a genetic component to Alzheimer's? It's called ApoE. So everybody should go test their ApoE. If you happen to have an ApoE2, there's 3 different alleles in ApoE2, which 1% of the population has. You will probably never see Alzheimer's in 3 lifetimes. You can have an ApoE3, which means you're neutral like myself. If you have a good lifestyle, you can avoid Alzheimer's. If you have an ApoE3 and you have a bad lifestyle, you're going towards Alzheimer's. If you have an ApoE4, 80% of people that have an ApoE4 have Alzheimer's. 25% of the population have this genetic biomarker.
Oof.
And it's not a standardized test. It costs $75. You only have to test once. If you have an ApoE3 neutral, that happens to be 75% of the population. So wouldn't you want to know that if you had a genetic predisposition to Alzheimer's? Clearly.
If you have a genetic predisposition to Alzheimer's, and I have heard that aluminum is one
Mm,
example. Amalgams, right? Fillings is
yes.
another that up your chances, even if you're already predisposed. They pretty much would guarantee that you end up with Alzheimer's. Is that
Well,
accurate? And how do we avoid all that stuff?
you know what? You set me up for the dunk. I appreciate the alley-oop. So here we go. Yes, Alzheimer's is a byproduct of a full body insufficiency from an environmental attack. Technically, Alzheimer's is not a disease of the brain. It's actually a disease of the immunity in the brain, and it's lifestyle driven with a genetic component. So, like you said, those heavy metals, if you're exposed, increase your incidence of Alzheimer's. However, there's data now, robust data, that speaks to the idea from mild to moderate Alzheimer's, you can stop and reverse it by changing your lifestyle.
So, what changes in lifestyle would somebody that's being faced with Alzheimer's? What would they need to do?
Remove specific foods. So the first thing I would remove is a food allergy, a food sensitivity, a food intolerance. I would go on a more enriched whole food diet. You could pick one that like the Mediterranean diet, which is great, the ketogenic diet, which is vastly different, a plant-based diet, which also would be great. You know, they have two sets of studies on diets. One was the ketogenic diet, which is very fat and meat oriented, and it worked. And one which is plant-based, which is a total antithesis of that keto diet, and they both worked. They had one commonality: whole foods. So the first thing I would do is change what I eat. Try and find 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes 3 to 5 times a week to exercise, with an emphasis on some form of weight resistance. Again, the studies are coming in on a daily basis that exercise is the golden ticket to decreasing Alzheimer's. In addition, there's specific supplements that have been shown in research to have a great salubrious effect on Alzheimer's, something called pro-resolving mediators, which allow for the resolution of inflammation, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D3, lion's mane, which is taking the world by storm, a mushroom, and last but not least, magnesium L-threonate. You do all those things, you're going to precipitously drop your incidence of Alzheimer's and reverse that mild to moderate position.
So is there a point of no return? You say mild to moderate. Is there a point where it's not going to help? You're not going to be able to reverse it?
Yeah, there are instances where you won't be able to. Most people are in a mild to moderate. Advanced, there's no data yet. Now, there is something that I call the secret recipe that I find worked in my office and other practitioners have found to work, and that would be non-thermal low-level laser. The addition of a true laser, red, green, and a violet light, has mystical effects on the brain.
So how does that work? Obviously the eyes are the brain or part of the brain. So the light coming in through the eyes, is that what you're working
Yeah,
with?
it can come through the eyes. It can also be exposed to the skull. It gets absorbed because it's photonic energy. It's non-thermal. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there about the conversation of red light therapy. Red light therapy. It's just a heating device. The last time I heated my head, I got a fever. That's not what you want, everybody. You want non-thermal low-level laser that allows for electromagnetic transfer of energy that stimulates and optimizes mitochondrial function and also allows for the stimulation of neuronal input in that interconnection. The body's all interconnected. If we can rewire that brain, we can start to have firing and refiring of the neurons inside that brain.
Well, it's time for another station break. Dr. Silverman and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So please stay with us. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Why is the gut the fountain of youth? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing longevity is Dr. Robert Silverman. His website, drrobertsilverman.com. Dr. Silverman, why is the gut considered the fountain of youth?
The gut, as I said before, is the epicenter of your health. Your immune cells are in your gut. What have you done for your guts lately? Do you have the guts to be healthy? I ask all my patients. And, you know, it's a fascinating thing that the conversation of the gut, and it grows every day. But what's most interesting is 90% of the data that's been published on the gut has been published in the last 5 years. So if you're seeking out a practitioner and you haven't spoken to somebody who's, let's say, staying with the data, you're going to be missing out on a valuable part. Now, interesting that we are made up of bacteria. 90% of our body is bacteria, 10% of our body is human cells. So we're actually outnumbered at a 10-to-1 ratio. So somebody would appear as a practitioner to be myopic if all they wanted to do was kill bacteria. You want to foster good bacteria. You want to get rid of bad bacteria. And that's the basis for, and the starting point for good gut health.
So there's a lot of talk about candida, the overgrowth. I assume that candida is naturally occurring, but when all these things that we do to our system, antibiotics and glyphosates and everything else, kill off
Mm.
the good guys, the um, candida overgrows. What impact is that having, and how common is it?
Candida overgrowth, or yeast, if you will, something called small intestinal fungal overgrowth. It's a new term out there. So CFO, 97% of CFOs is candida. Candida leads you down a path of what we call leaky gut, breaks in your gut, which cause immune compromise. Something that's interesting about candida, candida is one of the pathogens that are on the list of things that can lead to Alzheimer's disease. And it's great to have this conversation. I mean, there was a night I had a prescient moment. And in that moment, I said, won't it be great that I can go on a radio TV show where someone doesn't just ask me about the gut, but they ask me about the intricacies of yeast and candida? And the moment has happened.
It's that magic moment. So what is the impact and why?
Candida?
Hmm.
Well, unfortunately, your gut is like an ecosystem. I like to refer to it as a neighborhood. So 90% of your gut is what we call commensal bacteria. It's the middle class. They have values. They keep their lawns clean. They pay their taxes, and they're really nice people. And if you have that, you do not have dysbiosis. Then you have 5% of the population in there is very rich. They can populate really quick. They can do a whole bunch of really good things. But on the other side is the people from the bad side of the neighborhood, detrimental. But you need them because you need them to balance out, but you need them because the good bacteria needs to know what's bad. And I know when I say an ecosystem, people are a little confused, but when you put it in the confines of a neighborhood, they get very, very, it becomes quite evocative.
So what are the symptoms if you have an overgrowth?
Well, one of the things are, do you get gas and bloating after you eat? Do you have brain fog 30 to 45 minutes after you eat? If you have any one of those two things, you would want to check yourself for candida. Do you have urgency to use the laboratory? Do you have absence from using the laboratory? Things of that nature also will lead you down a path that you would want to see, do you have an expression of candida? Some real advanced expressions, do you have fungus on your skin? Do you have fungus on your eyelids? Because whatever's on the skin, which is a line of defense, is occurring inside your gut.
So putting stuff on your face to clear a skin rash is probably not going to do it, right?
You just talked about so eloquently about treating the symptom, not looking at the system, and not going to root cause resolution. We should always look at the body from the inside out. Unfortunately, part of longevity is trying to look pretty, trying to look handsome, guapo, if you will. And part of that problem kind of sways you away. Hey, I want to get rid of the blemish, but what's the blemish there for? You just gave a great example.
It's there to let you know something's going wrong, awry inside, right?
Yeah, without question.
So one more question about candida. How accurate or how the testing that we have right now in mainstream medicine, will it pick it up or not?
There's this hard line divide between mainstream medicine and what we call alternative medicine. And unfortunately, when it comes to candida, I found that the alternative medicine has much more effective testing. So for me, the most effective type of test would be a blood test for candida, not a stool test. And in that, the accuracy, if it's done well, is in the high 90s now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is it looking
Yeah.
for waste product versus the actual critter?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well said. Well said. Waste product. Correct.
Yeah, I understand
I'm a
their waste is pretty toxic.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of blood serums because I think it's, obviously it's part of your circulatory system, and being a proponent of that because that's what's going on inside your poop. We can use that word on radio and TV, is one isolated incidence of something that went in and came out.
But the blood is covering all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what's
So
circulating throughout the
it
body
is
and feeding it or whatever.
yeah, it's the
Okay.
gold standard, as we like to refer to.
So tell us about the gut-brain axis function.
Whatever you do to your gut, you do to your brain. Whatever you do to your brain, you do to your gut, and you do so in a millisecond. As I said before, did you know that all neurodegenerative diseases have an origin in the gut? Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, multiple sclerosis. And one little addition, 90% of people who suffer from autism have a gut issue.
My goodness. And the gut issues are running rampant because of our diet. Yes.
Yeah, you really signified that really well with the glyphosate, the ultra processed foods, the increased sugars, the environment full of toxins. Did you know that if you live anywhere between 1 to 3 miles from Parkinson's disease, you have a 24% chance of increasing Parkinson's because of the runoff of the toxins in the water because they're trying to keep the grass so pristine?
You mean golf courses?
Mhm.
You said
Yes.
from Parkinson's disease. I'm going, is it contagious? So,
It's not airborne, but it is looking almost soil borne.
everything is at this point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, everything.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So why is the gut-brain axis function critical for healthy aging?
Well, I mean, these neurodegenerative diseases are a sign of aging, and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's do have a decrease in life expectancy. You know, love to make a little point about Alzheimer's because, if you tell somebody the number one killer is cardiovascular disease, they look at you and go, eh, which is interesting. 51% of Americans die of some cardiovascular disease. If you say Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative disease, you gather their attention. It is the seventh leading cause of death in the world, sixth leading cause of death in America, number one leading cause of death for women in Australia, number two leading cause of death in the UK for women. Women are much more susceptible to Alzheimer's because they're more susceptible to neurodegenerative disease, because neurodegenerative diseases are based on autoimmunity, your body attacking itself. So I don't see a decrease because people are not embracing quality lifestyles. But I just wanted to make a point. Now, interesting, when you look at the finances of Alzheimer's, it costs about $360 billion to the American healthcare cost per year. They speculate by the year 2050, it'll be $1 trillion. It is the most expensive healthcare disease in America today because of its direct and indirect costs. So the obvious statement is we need to do something about
Quickly.
it. Mhm.
Yeah. And if anybody's ever out there has ever had a loved one come down with Alzheimer's, it's heartbreaking for everybody involved. If we can find a way to avoid it, I would say, yeah, let's give up our Wheaties, okay?
And we should really define mild. I use the term a lot, mild to moderate Alzheimer's. So I'll ask somebody a basic question: have you ever forgotten where you parked your car? Did you ever have to search for your keys? I have. That is a very early sign of Alzheimer's. Now, don't fret. I suggest that everybody goes on an anti-Alzheimer's diet. So I do already recommend certain acronyms like GPS, DNA, and IRS. DNA, no dairy. Sorry. I know everybody loves cheese. No nicotine, no artificial sweeteners. DNA. GPS, no gluten, definitive. No or limited ultra processed food, P, and avoid and limit sugars. IRS, inflammation reduction strategies. And hear this clearly: no processed seed oils. I don't care what the influencers say. If they want to eat it, let them. And no deep fried foods. If you do GPS, DNA, and IRS, you're going to have a healthy life. You're going to have a good lifespan, and you're going to have vitality.
How much does our habits, I mean, we've designed our lives around pull it out of the freezer, throw it into the microwave, eat it on the way to work, or throw it at our kids on their way out the door to school. If you're talking about, eating real food, that's going to change our lifestyle just trying to get it provided for us, isn't it?
It's a great point. Here I can purchase this beautiful organic bison with organic broccoli, sprinkled with extra virgin olive oil, some cashew nuts, and put it in the microwave to heat it up and ruin the whole meal. And we do that because we live a very fast-paced life in America. We live a life where people work 5, 6, and like you and I, unfortunately or fortunately, 7 days a week. It's just how we're constituted. So to get around that, I strongly suggest avoiding certain things like a microwave, using hot pots, using regular pots. And unfortunately for some people, like myself, they eat the food cold.
Yeah, I haven't been opposed to that. It's like, we always think we have to have it hot, but the other day I didn't have time and I had an organic sweet potato that I'd already baked and I tried it cold. Hey, it was doggone good. It's surprising. We have these things that we think are deal breakers, but if you get adventuresome, you can really find some other things that work out. Is there a problem with the microwave itself?
No, it's just the radiation that the microwave emits. You know, I would be amiss if I didn't talk about fruits. So it's a big question. Is fruits healthy? So I'm going to make a statement that may be perplexing. Fruits are healthy, but a lot of fructose isn't healthy, which is the sugar in a fruit. So if somebody were to say to me, can I eat fruits? I would say yes. It's not the fruit that you eat, it's when you eat the fruit. So if somebody wants a real secret recipe, here it is. On a meal, and I sit down to have a good meal, the first thing I would eat is fiber. The next thing after fiber would be protein and fat, and it would end with the carbohydrates. If you eat in that order, you will decrease your blood glucose rise by 73% and your insulin release by 47%. So don't count calories, count chemicals. Don't count calories, count satiety. Don't count calories, count nutrients. Don't count carbs. Look at when you eat your food. So it's the nuance of it all that'll really lead you down the healthy pathway.
And sounds a little simpler than what some people would have you believe, right?
I think that when it's just that, when you truly understand that it's just that simple, put your carbs at the end of the meal.
Well, it's time for us to take another station break. Please stay with us as Dr. Silverman and I continue to explore longevity, gut health, and immunity. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Okay, so I'm already behind the nutritional power curve. What do I do? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Robert Silverman. His website, drsilverman.com. Dr. Silverman, let's talk about supplementation. People say, well, you should be able to get it from your food, right? Well, it doesn't sound like we're getting it from our food from what this last 3 segments we've been talking. So, what do you recommend as supplementation, and what do you suggest you be careful about supplementation?
That's a great question. And I agree with you. We should be able to get it from our food. However, if you're 50 or 60 years old and you've had this habit of not eating good quality food, you're probably not going to flick the switch real quick. So hence the idea of supplementation to a good quality diet. So I have what I call my foundation 5, real simply in supplementation. Number 1 would be a good qualified multivitamin, multimineral to fill in some of those nutritional gaps that you're missing. Number 2 would be vitamin D3 with K2. So there's a lot of conversation. Why with K? Well, vitamin D will then shuttle calcium because of the usage of K to the bone and not the soft tissue. Vitamin D is, does a swath of health promoting properties. It is literally one of the Swiss Army knives of health. It improves immunity, bone health, musculoskeletal health, cognitive health, and of course, gut health. The other one I would recommend, or the third one on the list, would be omega-3 fatty acids. Somebody said today, I was on a podcast, that if you eat a whole can of sardines, now I happen to hate sardines, but if I were to grin and bear it and eat a whole case, a whole box, a whole whatever it is of sardines, the thought of it is almost making me lose my ability to converse. It would be 1 gram. You need 2 grams of omega-3 fish oils per day. Did you know that 2 grams of omega-3 fish oils will increase your health span by 5 years starting today? 5 years. Did you know by consuming 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3, you increase your health span by 3 years? So my math, hopefully it's not too shoddy. 5 plus 3, omega-3 plus D3 equals 8 years of health span starting today. Now, I don't know about you. I kind of like that. Number 4 would be a pre and a probiotic. Probiotic is good bacteria that you need to populate the gut. The prebiotic is like a fiber which feeds the probiotic. And last but not least, I'm a big proponent of collagen. I found it to be very helpful for skin, hair, and nails. There's an aesthetic thing, little vain. It is a sin, but I apologize for it. It's also helpful with the gut. And then I would also supplement with my 3 superheroes, Akkermansia, which is a specific probiotic that's been shown to enable people to achieve a good body composition, blood glucose, and immunity. Creatine, which without question is the conversation piece right now. Creatine has been around for 30 years. It is the second most studied nutrient behind vitamin C. Creatine is shown to increase muscle mass 5 to 10 grams a day. It's great to ward off Alzheimer's, and for cognitive effect, it has a more beneficial effect there for females than males. And the new one I would talk about would be a peptide, BPC 157. They call that the Wolverine supplement because as Hugh Jackman gets shot and stabbed in all these movies and he heals before your eyes, BPC 157 has those Wolverine type properties. So those would be the supplement, but don't forget supplemental to what? A good lifestyle, which includes exercise, sleep, reduction of stress, and good quality food.
So, speaking of which, sleep. Everybody has a different idea of what good sleep is and how much we need. Where are you with that?
Sleep is critical. It's one lifestyle hack that we can control. We need about 7.5 hours of good sleep. If we're able to sleep well, we're actually able to recover a lot of our brain strength. Interesting. Our brain is a sponge. It shrinks to about 40% of its size when we sleep appropriately, squeezing out all those metabolic wastes. So if you want to, have a healthy brain, you want to do better on a test, you want to enjoy the next day, get about 7.5 hours of good quality sleep, which is so hard because with all the blue lights, the red lights, any kind of light, noise, people eating late at night, people drinking caffeine before they go to sleep or try to go to sleep makes no sense. There's a half-life of caffeine of 4 to 8 hours. Everybody, I'm a big coffee guy. I say it just like a native New Yorker. We have to limit that. But sleep is probably the one hack that we can control better than anything.
You said the brain squishes down when you sleep. Is that why some of us are not morning
40%.
people?
I think, that's a great question. Some of us are not morning people. That indicates that we haven't got enough sleep the night before. I always tease everybody. If I get my 7.5 hours, I wake up and it's like, what can I tear apart? What damage can I do today?
Absolutely, have that energy to do something. Um, so let's go back to your low level laser. You brought that up. What is low level laser, and where does one achieve that? Where does one get that?
Well, there's specific companies, and I know you want me to be company free here, so I'm going to be company free. So here's what you're going to look for. You're going to look for class 2 lasers, which mean you do not have to wear goggles because a class 2 does not require a goggle. You're looking for laser companies that have FDA clearances. So for instance, you may want one since you want to use a laser for pain that has an FDA clearance and decrease pain and increase range of motion. You want it based on the wavelengths. So there's 3 different wavelengths that are very popular right now. Obviously, red light, 635 is the wave, if no pun intended, is the conversation. There's a green light, which is great for stem cells, which has a wavelength of 520 nanometers. And there's a violet light that has a wavelength of 405 nanometers. The green and the violet together do a great job of killing a lot of pathogens in one's gut if you would apply it in a functional medicine light. So you're looking for a laser that provides photoelectric transfer of energy, and you're also looking for one that actually has a low power, milliwatts, not watts, because a lot of watts, a lot of power lead to heating. And you know what? You don't need to cook my grits too much.
So it sounds like energy medicine. Is it the frequency that is impacting the change?
Great question. It's the wavelength with the frequency being the cherry on top.
Okay, so the wavelength determines exactly where it's getting and what it's treating.
The wavelengths actually determine the properties that are going to be exposed to the body. The frequency is typically the amount of times the light hits the body. There's specific frequencies that we know that are effective for certain conditions, like 40 hertz, fabulous for Alzheimer's. 2, great for bone density injuries. 10, great for vagus nerve stimulation.
So is this something that the layperson can get and work on, do for themselves, or is it something we need a practitioner for?
Well, a layperson can now purchase them, which has been new to the arena. But I always do suggest coming to somebody, and I'm not saying just like me, but somebody who is experienced in the application of the laser and understands how to tie it in with all the lifestyle. So if I were to make your recovery room, your longevity recovery room, the top of my list next to a sauna would be a non-thermal low-level laser.
And we all need recovery at this point, I'm afraid. We've been living in the planet Earth, and planet Earth is suffering. So, what's the mainstream medicine missing about gut health and longevity?
I just went to a gastroenterologist, Harvard trained, brilliant guy, trusted him and everything like that. And I had a infection. And I said, are there any foods that you would recommend me avoiding or consuming? Not trying to set him up. And what did he tell me to eat? White bread. So I think the problem is they're not adapting enough to the new data. And I think that is their plight. I'm very pro-medical. I'm very pro-Western. I believe in integration. I always tell everybody, if I'm in charge, I want to hear everybody's opinion from one end of the spectrum to the other, so I have access to any opportunity to help somebody. Because in the end, it is patient result driven. But I think that the alternative route is really going to take over because we're offering people what they want. We're offering root cause resolution. We're listening and we're answering their concerns. And we're not backed by pharmaceutical companies.
You know, the you know, I have quite a few friends that are doctors, and I feel really bad for them in this day and age because when they were busy trying to make people well, the insurance companies took over, the pharmaceutical companies took over. Now they work much harder for much less, and they spend more of their time on computers looking for diagnostic codes than they do talking to the patient. And every one of my
Correct.
friends that's a doctor, that's their major complaint. They're burning out. And within that, do they have time to get up on the latest information? I don't think so. So it's the whole system seems to be out of whack.
I agree, and having come from being a practitioner who used to take a lot of insurance, I just that was not how I wanted to exist because I'm spending all my time trying to get the patient covered, trying to get paid some shekels, as opposed to doing what I went to school for, doing what I wake every day for, trying to adhere to my mantra, creating health for future generations starting now. So I don't blame them. I feel their pain.
Oh yeah, it's sad. It really is, and beautiful, beautiful people with a lot of skills. Thank God for them. So it's about that time when I need to ask you, Dr. Silverman, what's your mission?
Well, I just gave it away before. My mission is to create health for future generations starting now, but my mission is to inspire people to be healthy like I was inspired. I mean, when you go into chiropractic and alternative medicine, you do so because somebody inspired you. I had a congenital problem that somebody helped me with. I got up at 21 years old and said, this is what I want to do. Every day, I want to help somebody like you help me. And the game's changed a little bit. I'm fortunate in that I just don't do it one-on-one in a clinical setting. I get to come on great stations and shows like yours. I get to write books. There's a big thing called the internet, social media, and stuff like that. So I'm able to share my message. But for anybody ever listening to me, the message is true and it's intrinsic. I want to be able to help you, but you got to take a step and try and help yourself as well.
Isn't that the key? Taking that step to help yourself.
Without question. Just remember, Jim Rome once said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live.
And take care of the planet. It's the only place we have to live on, right?
Indeed,
Indeed.
indubitably.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show again and for everything you're doing in the world, Dr. Silverman.
I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Hope to see you soon again.
I hope so too. Our guest this hour has been Dr. Robert Silverman, a chiropractic doctor, clinical nutritionist, and author of Immune Reboot and Inside Out Health. To find out more about Dr. Silverman, where you can find his books and all he has to offer, visit his website, drrobertsilverman.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please, be sure to join us right here again next time on the X-Zone TV channel, xztv.ca, where this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world. And my friends, start today.